The Chevron station lights cut through the October fog like a blade. What began as a simple act of kindness between two strangers at a gas pump would spiral into a deadly conspiracy involving organ traffickers, outlaw bikers, and a grandfather who didn't know his grandson existed. By the time the smoke cleared, 4 lives would be saved, a criminal empire exposed, and a family torn apart by pride would have one last chance at redemption. Daniel Morrison brought his vintage Harley to a smooth stop at the fuel pump, the motorcycle's engine ticking as it cooled. At 62, he carried himself with the bearing of a man who'd spent decades in uniform, his silver hair cropped military short, his pale blue eyes constantly scanning. The station sat isolated along a stretch of highway winding through dense Washington forests, 20 miles from the nearest town. A massive motorcycle roared in beside him, its rider bringing the black machine to an abrupt halt. The man was easily 6'4", his leather vest bearing the unmistakable Death's head patch. His wild beard was streaked with grey, and something primal emanated from him. Daniel kept his expression neutral. He'd encountered outlaw bikers before. His policy was simple: show respect, mind your business, avoid trouble. The young attendant emerged, his eyes widening at the newcomer's patches. When the big man demanded fuel, the attendant insisted on payment first. Company policy. "I left my wallet at the clubhouse," the biker growled. "I'll settle up tomorrow." "I can't do that," the attendant replied, backing away. Daniel watched the tension build. The biker wasn't looking for trouble, just fuel. Reading people had kept Daniel alive during his time with an elite Marine unit. This man, for all his intimidating appearance, simply needed help. "Put it on my tab," Daniel said, stepping forward with his credit card. "His tank and mine." The biker studied him, surprised. Then his eyes caught Daniel's forearm where the sleeve had ridden up, revealing an old tattoo, a lightning bolt piercing a skull. Recognition flickered. "Desert Storm," the man said quietly. Daniel nodded once. "Victor Kane." The biker introduced himself after the tanks were filled, extending a massive hand. "I owe you one. Daniel Morrison. And no, you don't. That's not how it works," Victor insisted. "Debts get paid." "Where you headed?" "Home. Pinewood. About 30 miles east." Something flickered in Victor's eyes. "Small world. I've got business around there myself." As Daniel rode away, he couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. The encounter seemed insignificant, yet instinct suggested otherwise. His cabin sat on 5 acres of woodland, isolated and secure. Motion-activated lights flickered on as he approached. Inside was Spartan but functional. Stone fireplace, workbench with motorcycle parts, shelves of military history. On the mantel sat one photograph, 12 men in desert camouflage beside a helicopter. His unit, 1991. Only 5 had returned. The phone rang, shattering the quiet. "Morrison," he answered. "Daniel, it's Frank Miller." The voice belonged to Pinewood's police chief. "What can I do for you, Frank?" "There was a house fire tonight. Professional arson. Elena Brooks' place." The name struck him. David Brooks, Pinewood Fire Department, died 5 years ago, saving a family from an apartment blaze. Daniel had attended the funeral. "Elena and the boy, okay. They got out. But Daniel, someone torched it to kill them. Elena's a surgical nurse at Regional Medical. Word is she witnessed something she shouldn't have." Daniel closed his eyes. "Why call me?" "Because David asked me to. Right before that last fire, he said if trouble ever came for Elena and the boy, I should reach out to you, said you'd understand. The pieces aligned, David Brooks, of course." "Where are they?" "Community center, emergency shelter. Tell Elena I'm coming." He hung up and retrieved a steel lockbox from beneath his bed. Inside lay a Colt 1911, meticulously maintained with spare magazines. He hadn't touched this weapon in years. At the community center, Daniel found Elena sitting with her son in a makeshift shelter area. She was a slender woman in her late 30s, composed despite evident exhaustion. Beside her, a 12-year-old boy with blonde hair slept under a Red Cross blanket. "Mrs. Brooks," Daniel said quietly. "Daniel Morrison. Frank said you might want to talk." Elena studied him. "I remember you. From David's funeral. Frank mentioned David told him to contact me if you were in trouble. Why would he say that?" "I don't know. I don't recall you two being friends." "We weren't." "Not exactly." Daniel sat in the offered chair. "The fire wasn't an accident. Someone tried to kill us while we slept." "What did you see at the hospital?" Elena's hands clasped tightly. "I don't know who I can trust." "Fair enough. But you need somewhere safer than this. I have a cabin, secure off the grid. You and Lucas would be safe there until we figure this out." "Why would you help us?" "Let's just say I've seen enough widows and orphans." Before Elena could respond, Lucas stirred awake, his eyes adjusting to his surroundings with startling maturity for his age. "Mom, who's this?" "An old acquaintance of your father's," Elena replied carefully. "Mr. Morrison." Lucas studied Daniel with unabashed curiosity. "You knew my dad?" "I did. He was a brave man." "The bravest," Lucas agreed solemnly. He sat up fully. "Did you come to help us?" "Mom's been scared since last week, even before the fire." Elena placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. "Lucas, it's true. I saw those men taking pictures of our house, and you got that weird phone call." Daniel's attention sharpened. "What men?" Lucas looked to his mother for permission. After hesitation, Elena nodded. "Two guys in a black SUV," Lucas explained. "They were watching our house yesterday," Elena added quietly. "It started last Thursday after my shift." "After I saw," she trailed off. "The man in the SUV had a tattoo on his neck," she continued, "a caduceus with skull-headed snakes. I've worked in medicine for 15 years and never seen anything like it." Daniel filed this away. "That means something to you." Fear finally showed in Elena's eyes. "It means what I saw goes deeper than I thought." Before Daniel could respond, Chief Miller appeared, his face tense. "We need to move them now." Officers spotted a suspicious vehicle circling. Same SUV description. "How many inside?" "At least 3, armed." "Get ready to escort them out the rear," Daniel instructed. "I'll—" The rumble of motorcycles cut through the night. Not one or two, but many. A procession of headlights appeared. Victor Kane led the formation, at least a dozen riders behind him. The massive biker dismounted, approaching with purpose. "Reynolds," he greeted Daniel. "Thought I might find you here." "This is quite a coincidence." "No coincidence. We heard about the fire. Came to offer protection." "For Elena and Lucas Brooks?" "How did you know?" Victor's eyes were serious. "David Brooks was one of ours. Left the club when Lucas was on the way, but family is family. Professional courtesy." Miller stepped forward, hand on his weapon. "Sullivan, your boys need to clear—" "Chief?" Victor interrupted calmly. "There's a black Escalade with 3 armed men approaching from the east side right now. My brothers and I are here to ensure Elena and Lucas leave alive." Daniel made his decision. "Frank, we need the help." Before the chief could argue, his radio crackled. "Chief, black Escalade just pulled around back. 3 males exiting with automatic weapons." Victor whistled to his men, who immediately dismounted, several reaching into saddlebags. Gunfire erupted inside the community center. Daniel, Victor, and Miller burst through the rear door to find 2 officers pinned down, while 3 men in tactical gear advanced toward Elena and Lucas's section. Daniel raised his Colt and fired, dropping the nearest attacker with a shoulder shot. Victor flanked left while Miller called for backup. The attackers, realizing they were outgunned, began retreating. One turned for a final shot at Daniel. Time slowed. Daniel knew his reflexes weren't what they once were. The shot came from Victor's weapon. The attacker crumpled. "Still got it, old man," Victor commented. Daniel secured the wounded attacker, noticing a tattoo on his wrist, the caduceus with skull-headed snakes. "What does this symbol mean?" Daniel demanded. The man coughed blood. "You're already dead. All of you. You don't know what you're up against." The man's eyes glazed before Daniel could press further. Eleanor emerged with Lucas, her arm protectively around her son. She surveyed the chaos, then looked at Victor. "You're still wearing his colors." Victor nodded. "We promised David we'd watch over you if anything happened." From a distance, as he requested. Eleanor's expression hardened. "I never wanted Lucas exposed to that life." "And now," Daniel interjected, "these men came to kill everyone here to get to you. Whatever you saw at that hospital has powerful people willing to commit murder." Lucas looked up at his mother, then at Daniel and Victor. "I'm not afraid of them. Dad told me they were his brothers once." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, decision was visible. "Mr. Morrison, I accept your offer. Lucas and I will come to your cabin." Victor exchanged a look with Daniel. It's time she knew everything, including why David named you specifically as their protector. Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" Victor looked genuinely surprised. "You don't know. David was your son's best friend. Lucas is your grandson through Michael." The boy looked up sharply, eyes widening. Daniel's mind reeled. His son had been connected to this town, these people. Michael Morrison, who he'd believed dead for years after a motorcycle accident in Nevada. No body, no funeral, just painful absence. "We need to move," Daniel said, his voice steady despite inner turmoil. "This location is compromised." Victor added quietly, "Daniel, there's more you need to know about Michael. But not here. Later." As they prepared to leave, Lucas approached Daniel hesitantly. "Are you really my grandfather?" Daniel looked down at the boy, seeing echoes of Michael in his face. "Seems that way." Lucas extended his hand formally. "I'm glad to meet you, sir. Dad always said family is the most important thing." Daniel accepted the small hand, feeling its firm grip. "Your father sounds like a wise man." As they moved toward Daniel's truck, Hell's Angels forming protective escort, the evening's earlier encounter took on new meaning. Nothing about this was coincidental. At Daniel's cabin, security measures activated. Victor's men established a perimeter while Daniel, Elena, and Victor gathered to discuss what Elena had witnessed. "3 nights ago, I covered a shift in the transplant unit," Elena began. "There was an emergency kidney transplant. Everything seemed routine until I noticed the surgical resident checking the donor file. His expression was wrong." "What did you see?" Daniel prompted. "The donor was anonymous, but I glimpsed the chart. No patient history, no consent documentation, just a code I'd never seen before." She continued, "After surgery, I stayed late. The operating room should have been cleaned, but it was locked. I used my key card and found Dr. Patterson, the chief surgeon, with 2 men I didn't recognize. They were packing something into an organ transport container. It was nearly 2 a.m. No transport was scheduled. When they saw me, Patterson looked terrified. One man, tall with that caduceus tattoo, asked who I was. I apologized for interrupting and left. But as I walked away, I heard him tell Patterson, if she becomes a problem, she'll disappear like the others." Victor's voice was low with anger. "Organ trafficking, taking organs from vulnerable people and selling them to wealthy clients. It gets worse," Elena said. "Yesterday, I tried to access surgical records from the past month. Several procedures were missing completely. When I asked about them, the administrator said those surgeries had never been scheduled. They're erasing evidence." Daniel stood abruptly. "We need proof that will stand up in court." "These people have resources," Elena warned. "That tattoo belongs to a group called Asclepius Consortium. They present as a medical research foundation, but there are dark rumors." Victor nodded. "My brothers are gathering intelligence. We have contacts at Regional Medical. We'll know when Patterson is vulnerable." Outside, Lucas was examining Daniel's Harley with fascination. The morning sun caught his blonde hair, emphasizing his youth and innocence, everything they were now committed to protecting. "There's something else," Elena said quietly. "The man with the tattoo knew David. Called him by name when threatening me. David's death wasn't an accident, was it?" Victor's massive hands clenched. "We suspected. David had been asking questions about missing veterans from the VA hospital where he volunteered. Men with no families. Perfect targets. And now we protect what he loved most," Daniel affirmed. "They needed to draw out Patterson, get him to talk, record it, then take everything to the FBI. But first, Elena and Lucas needed to be somewhere truly safe." Daniel called an old friend. Robert Hayes answered on the second ring. "Hayes," came the familiar voice. "Robert, it's Daniel Morrison. I need a secure location for 2 civilians, high threat level." After a brief pause, "How soon?" "Today. I'll have the compound ready. You know the route." 3 hours later, after careful driving and switching vehicles twice, they reached Hayes's property, a fortified compound deep in unmarked forest. Hayes was a tall, lean man in his early 60s, dark skin contrasting with silver hair. He moved with fluid grace, despite favoring his left leg. "Still living like a hermit, I see," Daniel greeted. Hayes grinned. "Look who's talking." "These the packages?" "Elena and Lucas Brooks," Daniel confirmed. Hayes approached Lucas, bending to the boy's level. "You've had a rough couple of days. How are you holding up?" Lucas considered carefully. "Scared sometimes, but Mom says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared." Hayes smiled. "Your mother is wise." He straightened, addressing Elena. "Ma'am, no harm will come to your boy while he's under my protection. You have my word." Elena evaluated him carefully, then nodded decisively. "Thank you." After getting them settled, Hayes pulled Daniel aside. "When you called, you didn't mention the boy was Michael's grandson. It's complicated. With you, it always is. This is about Michael, isn't it? Trying to make up for lost time through his son." Daniel's expression hardened. "It's about stopping criminals murdering people for organs." "Sure it is," Hayes agreed. "But it's also about redemption." Eleanor emerged, her expression tense. "I should get back with you. Patterson works night shift tomorrow, our best opportunity." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "You're planning to confront an organ trafficker with civilian backup?" "She's the witness," Daniel explained. "Knows what to look for, who's involved. And she's also a mother with a child who needs her," Hayes pointed out. Elena lifted her chin. "This is my fight too. These people killed my husband, burned our home, threatened my son. I'm not sitting it out." Hayes nodded with respect. "Understood, but you'll need more than bikers and 1 retired operator. This Asclepius Consortium sounds professional, connected. Give me 12 hours to make calls, other veterans who'd be interested." Daniel considered. "If you haven't made contact by then, we proceed," Hayes agreed. "Fair enough." Elena went to say goodbye to Lucas. Through the window, Daniel watched her embrace her son, their bond evident and precious. "You're sure about taking a civilian into combat?" Hayes asked. "No, but it's her choice, and we need her." Hayes sighed. "Just like old times, walking into fire with inadequate intel. Worked out okay most of the time." "Most of the time," Hayes echoed. "It's the other times that concern me." They fell silent, weighted by shared memories. After a moment, Hayes spoke again. "Michael's boy. Does he know about his father?" Daniel shook his head. "Not yet. Victor says there's more to tell. Just be careful. The past complicates the present, especially with family. Elena returned, eyes slightly red but composed. Lucas understands. Made me promise to call at exactly 7. As they prepared to leave, Lucas ran out for one final hug. I'll be good, he promised. Elena knelt, cupping his face. I'll call tonight, and I'll be back before you know it. Lucas turned to Daniel with unexpected seriousness. Grandpa Daniel, you'll keep Mom safe? The simple question hit hard. Grandpa Daniel, so natural, yet so foreign. I will, Lucas. You have my word. The drive back was tense but uneventful, switching vehicles at predetermined points. At the third switch, Victor himself waited beside a sedan. Everything secure? Daniel asked. Victor nodded. Perimeters holding, hospitals quiet, Patterson's completing his shift as scheduled. They planned carefully. After his shift, Patterson stopped at a bar 3 blocks from the hospital. Always alone, always the same booth. Perfect vulnerability. As they approached Daniel's cabin on the final stretch, instinct prickled at Daniel's awareness. Something was wrong. He slowed, signaling Victor to hold back. The world erupted in blinding light and concussive force. Daniel came to in fragments, ringing ears, glass against his cheek, blood taste, smoke smell. The sedan's front end was crumpled against an oak tree. Elena, he rasped, reaching for her. She stirred, groaning. What happened? IED military grade. His door was jammed. He kicked out the remaining windshield glass. Can you move? I think so. We need to get clear. Now. Once outside, Daniel scanned with predatory focus, Colt drawn. The explosion had occurred 50 yards from the cabin road, close enough to disable, far enough that attackers would need to approach. Victor, Elena gasped. Daniel spotted Victor's motorcycle on its side, then Victor's voice. Over here. The biker emerged from behind a pine, shotgun in hand, blood streaming from a forehead gash. Caught movement in the trees just before the blast. 3 men, tactical gear. Where now? Daniel asked. Moving toward the cabin. Probably think we were closer when they triggered it. Daniel considered options. Standard procedure was retreat and regroup, but that meant abandoning Victor's men at the cabin, men at risk to protect Elena and Lucas. We circle around, Daniel decided, north side where underbrush is thickest. Element of surprise evens the odds. Victor grinned predatorily. Just like old times, Marine. I need a weapon, Elena said firmly. Both men looked surprised. I grew up in rural Arizona. My father taught me to shoot before I learned to drive. Daniel withdrew a compact Glock, offering it grip first. Standard 9mm, 15 rounds, safeties off, point and pull. Elena accepted it with practiced ease. They moved in silent formation. Daniel on point, Elena center, Victor rear. Gathering darkness concealed their approach while attackers were silhouetted against security lights. At the clearing's edge, Daniel raised his fist. Ahead, 3 men in tactical gear advanced on the cabin using trees for cover. Their movements were disciplined, coordinated. Inside, Victor's men responded with tactical awareness, positioning to cover approach angles, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. We need to even the odds, Daniel whispered. Draw one away. Victor produced a military flashbang grenade. Always come prepared. Daniel outlined the plan quickly. Victor would create diversion with the flashbang. Daniel and Elena would flank from the north, eliminating any attacker who responded. Now, Daniel ordered. Victor threw the flashbang with precision. It detonated in disorienting light and sound. 2 attackers swung toward the explosion. Daniel moved with practiced speed, his first shot catching the nearest attacker in the shoulder. Elena fired simultaneously, forcing the second to dive for cover. Victor emerged from the east, shotgun roaring. Inside the cabin, the bikers laid down covering fire. For seconds, the night filled with chaotic gunfire. Daniel moved methodically, closing on the wounded attacker. "Stay down," Daniel commanded with unmistakable authority. The attacker froze, then slowly raised his hands. Blood seeped through his tactical vest. The third attacker made a desperate break for the tree line. Elena tracked him, but held fire. Range was extreme. "He's running," she called. Daniel was already moving, cutting through trees to intercept. He emerged 20 yards ahead, Colt raised. "That's far enough." The man skidded to a halt. For a moment, Daniel thought he might surrender. Instead, the attacker raised his weapon. Daniel fired twice. First round struck body armor, second found the upper thigh, severing the femoral artery. The attacker collapsed. Daniel kicked away the weapon, then applied a tourniquet. The man would live long enough to answer questions. Sudden silence followed the gunfire. Victor called to his men, confirming they were unharmed. Elena approached, Glock still properly gripped. "Is it over?" she asked, voice remarkably steady. "For now, but they'll send more." Victor approached. "My boys inside are okay. Cabin took damage." Daniel knelt beside the conscious attacker, removing his mask to reveal a surprisingly young face, early 30s with hardened features. "Former military?" Daniel asked. The man's jaw clenched silently. "Listen carefully," Daniel continued conversationally. "I want information on Asclepius Consortium and their operation at Regional Medical. Give me that and you walk away." "Why would I trust you?" "Because I was where you are once, following orders, doing what needed doing. But there are lines. Harvesting organs from homeless veterans, that's a line." Something changed in the attacker's expression. "I don't know what you're talking about," he insisted, but with less conviction. Victor joined them. "4 of my brothers have disappeared in the past year. Veterans, all of them. Men who served their country, then fell on hard times. They vanished near Regional Medical. Now we know why." The attacker's eyes darted between them, calculating. Elena stepped forward, her medical training asserting itself as she examined his shoulder. "This needs proper treatment." "You're a soldier," she continued, "or were. You signed up to protect people, not help murder them for organs." The man winced. "I didn't know what the operation was when I signed on. Security detail, they said. Good money, no questions." "When did you figure it out?" Daniel pressed. Long pause. 3 months ago. Overheard a conversation between Dr. Patterson and the director. They discussed inventory and harvest schedules. Didn't take much to connect dots. "The director?" Elena asked. "Dr. Victoria Cross, head of Asclepius Consortium. Former military surgeon turned pharmaceutical executive." He grimaced as Elena tightened bandaging. "Look, I've got a family. Mortgage. I couldn't just walk away." "But you can now," Daniel offered. "Tell us everything. Security protocols, facility locations, personnel. You disappear. New identity, fresh start." The attacker studied Daniel's face for deception. Whatever he saw convinced him. He nodded slowly. "There's a secondary facility, 20 miles outside town, old pharmaceutical research building. That's where they do the harvesting. Regional Medical is just for identification and evaluation." Elena's hands stilled. "Donors? You mean victims?" He had the decency to look away. "Official term is medical volunteers. Most are homeless, no families, many with health problems. Screening happens at free clinics run by Asclepius. Anyone with viable organs and no connections gets flagged." Daniel felt cold rage building, but kept his voice steady. "How many?" "I don't know total. 2, 3 a week from what I've seen. Operation's been running about 18 months. Victor cursed softly. "Dozens, maybe hundreds of veterans murdered." "Not just veterans," the man clarified. "Anyone vulnerable, but veterans were preferred. Better baseline health." The tactical coldness that had served Daniel throughout his career now allowed him to process this horror with detached precision. "Tomorrow night," Daniel decided, We hit the secondary facility. End this at the source. The attacker's eyes widened. You're insane. That place is a fortress. Armed guards, electronic security. I've taken worse, Daniel replied with quiet confidence. Victor nodded agreement. My brothers will ride with you. All of them. Elena's expression hardened with resolve. I'll identify the medical personnel. Make sure none slip away. As they finalized planning, distant sirens became audible. Police, Victor warned. Daniel turned to the attacker. Last chance. Are you with us or against us? The man hesitated briefly. What you're describing is suicide. But... He glanced at Elena, then back to Daniel. I've got skills you could use. Security layouts, guard rotations, access codes. Why the sudden change? Daniel asked skeptically. Maybe I want to sleep at night again. The man paused. Name's Garrett, former Army Rangers. Victor's eyes narrowed. Which regiment? 75th? 3rd Battalion? 2 tours Afghanistan? Victor and Daniel exchanged glances. The 75th Rangers had a reputation for excellence and brotherhood. If Garrett was truthful about his service, his change of allegiance might be genuine. Cut him loose, Daniel decided, but keep his weapon. Within 10 minutes, their makeshift convoy was ready. They left the other wounded attackers for police with an anonymous note detailing their connection to organ trafficking. As they pulled away, Elena glanced back at the devastation. In 48 hours, her life had transformed from quiet routine to chaotic violence. Yet strangely, she felt more focused than in the 5 years since David's death. We're doing the right thing, she said softly. Yes, we are, Daniel agreed. In the rearview mirror, motorcycle headlights formed a protective chain. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. From a wooded ridge half a mile away, Daniel studied the abandoned pharmaceutical facility through binoculars. What he saw confirmed Garrett's assessment: professional protection with multiple security layers. They were gathered in a small clearing. Daniel, Elena, Victor, core Hells Angels with tactical experience, and Garrett. Hayes had arrived with 3 former operators who'd responded to his call. Older men, but their eyes held focused intensity. Thermal imaging shows approximately 22 personnel inside, Hayes reported, consulting a tablet. 8 appear to be security, others concentrated in what seems to be a central medical facility. Patients? Elena asked. Hayes's expression darkened. 4 heat signatures consistent with sedated individuals, lower body temperatures, minimal movement. Next, harvesting subjects, Garrett confirmed grimly. Probably scheduled for tomorrow. They keep them sedated 24 hours before extraction. Elena paled. Then we have less time than we thought. Daniel surveyed their assembled force, not the worst odds he'd faced. Two-pronged approach, he decided, drawing a rough diagram in dirt. Hayes's team creates diversion at main entrance. Security will respond, pulling defenders from the east side where fence runs closest to trees. Garrett leaned forward. Service entrance on east side has minimal monitoring, used for waste disposal. They don't want attention there. That's our infiltration point, Daniel continued. Victor and 4 men with me and Elena. We enter through service door, locate victims, extract them while Hayes's team keeps security occupied. And Dr. Cross, Elena asked. She's the head. Secondary objective, Daniel replied. Victim extraction comes first, but if we can apprehend Cross or Patterson, that's valuable for prosecution. They finalized the plan with methodical precision. Communication protocols, equipment checks, escape routes. Each person understood their role. Elena found herself studying the men around her. These weren't criminals or thugs. They were focused, disciplined, deadly serious. Many bore subtle markers of military service. You should stay back, Daniel told Elena. Coordinate from here. Elena shook her head firmly. I'm going in. I'm the only one who can identify medical personnel involved. And if victims need immediate care, you'll need someone with training. Daniel studied her face, recognizing the same determination he'd seen in combat medics. Finally, he conceded. Stay behind me, and if I order you to pull back, you follow, no questions. Understood. As the team made final preparations, Victor approached Daniel privately. If this goes sideways, Victor said quietly, my brothers have instructions to ensure Elena gets back to her son, no matter what. Daniel nodded appreciation. Lucas is a good kid, deserves his mother. And his grandfather, Victor added meaningfully. Before Daniel could respond, Victor continued. You said there was more about Michael. Victor's expression grew solemn. After this, when it's done, you deserve to hear it properly. At precisely midnight, the operation began. Hayes's team approached the main entrance with deliberate noise, creating disturbance that security couldn't ignore. Motorcycle engines roared, headlights blazed, shotgun fire peppered the air. Meanwhile, Daniel led his infiltration group through dense woods toward the east fence. They moved with practiced silence, using natural cover and distraction to approach undetected. Garrett directed them to a fence section where electronic monitoring had a 3-second delay, minor flaw, but enough for experienced operators to exploit. They breached the perimeter without detection, crossing exposed ground in coordinated rush. At the service entrance, Garrett entered a code. The door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. Security control room is right, 50 feet, Garrett whispered. 2 guards usually. Daniel nodded to Victor, who detached 2 men to handle this threat. They moved with lethal purpose. Medical facility is sub-level 2, Garrett continued. Elevator requires keycard. Elena produced her hospital ID. Will this work? Garrett examined it. Should. They integrated security protocols. They proceeded deeper, encountering surprisingly little resistance. Hayes' diversion was working perfectly. The elevator descended smoothly. Sub-level 2 opened onto a space resembling a high-end clinic. Pristine white walls, polished floors, state-of-the-art equipment. This way, Garrett directed toward double doors marked Preparation. Beyond those doors, the true nature revealed itself. 4 hospital beds in a row, each occupied by a motionless figure connected to monitoring equipment. Elena moved immediately to the nearest bed, her training overriding horror. The occupant was an older man, his weathered face bearing marks of homelessness. A military tattoo on his forearm identified him as a Vietnam veteran. Heavy sedation, Elena reported, checking vitals, but stable. They've been keeping him hydrated, nourished, preserving organs. Daniel felt cold rage building as he surveyed the room. Can we move them? She nodded, disconnecting equipment with practiced efficiency. They'll need medical attention afterward, but immediate priority is getting them out. Victor's men secured stretchers, transferring the unconscious victims with surprising gentleness. The operation proceeded smoothly until double doors at the far end swung open. A woman in a white lab coat froze in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to calculated assessment. Dr. Victoria Cross, I presume, Daniel said calmly, his Colt pointed at her. The woman, 50s, silver-streaked dark hair in severe bun, betrayed no fear. Her cold eyes moved from Daniel to Elena to the bikers. You have no idea what you're interfering with, she stated clinically. I think we do, Elena replied, stepping forward. You're murdering vulnerable people for organs. A flicker of annoyance crossed Cross's face. Such simplistic moral framework. These people contribute nothing to society. They consume resources, burden healthcare. We're simply following efficiency to its logical conclusion. They're human beings, Daniel stated flatly. They're walking tissue collections, Cross countered. tissue that can save lives of individuals who actually matter. CEOS, politicians, people who drive civilization forward. Victor stepped forward, fury radiating. 3 of these men are veterans, men who served their country. Cross smiled thinly, and their country discarded them when no longer useful. We're simply following that example. Daniel had encountered many enemies during his career, but he'd rarely faced anyone whose moral corruption was so complete. Elena, he said quietly, continue evacuation. Victor, secure the doctor. As Victor moved toward Cross, her hand slipped into her lab coat pocket. Daniel reacted instantly, tackling her to the floor. Her hand emerged, holding not a weapon, but a small device with a prominent red button. Dead man's switch, Cross gasped as Daniel pinned her wrist. Release me or evidence disappears. All of it. Permanent electronic wipe followed by explosive charges in the server room. Daniel maintained his grip, applying precise pressure to the nerve cluster. You're assuming we care about evidence more than stopping you. You should, Cross replied through gritted teeth. Without it, this becomes just an abandoned building, and I become a respected physician harassed by criminals. My organization has protection at highest levels, judges, commissioners, even a state senator who received one of our products. Her eyes held arrogant calculation. You're wrong, Daniel informed her calmly. Your operation is already exposed. From the doorway, a new voice spoke. Hello, Victoria. Dr. Patterson stood there, hospital scrubs wrinkled, face haggard. But most significantly, he held a small recording device in trembling hand. Richard, Cross acknowledged coldly. Disappointing. It's over, Patterson stated, voice steadying. I've documented everything. Patient selections, procedures, transactions, all secured in multiple locations with automatic release if I don't check in every 24 hours. Cross's expression didn't change, but Daniel felt subtle shift, recognition of genuine defeat. Why now? She asked Patterson. After all this time, why develop conscience at this late stage? Patterson's gaze shifted to Elena. Because she reminded me what I once was. A healthcare provider who took an oath to do no harm. He swallowed hard. And because the last victim you selected was a 16-year-old runaway. A child. That was my line. Elena stepped forward, professional compassion extending even to this man. It's not too late to make this right. Your testimony, combined with evidence, can ensure accountability. Those responsible extend far beyond this room, Cross interjected. Maybe, Daniel acknowledged, finally securing the switch and handing it to Victor. But it's a start. As bikers completed victim evacuation, Daniel restrained Cross with professional efficiency. The operation had succeeded beyond expectations. They'd rescued immediate victims and secured both physical evidence and cooperative testimony. Outside, dawn was breaking. Distant sirens indicated state police responding to Hayes's anonymous tip. The rescued victims were loaded into an ambulance, with Elena accompanying them. As the facility was secured, Daniel stood alone at the perimeter fence, watching systematic dismantling of an operation that had caused immeasurable suffering. The night sky lightened, fitting metaphor for exposure of darkness to light. Victor approached. State police have Cross and Patterson in custody. FBI's been contacted. Too big for local authorities to bury. Daniel nodded. Elena's riding with victims to regional medical staff she trusts. They'll be properly cared for. Another nod. Victor studied him, then made a decision. It's time you knew about Michael. The name brought Daniel's full attention back. What about him? He's alive, Daniel. The simple statement hit with physical force. Genuine shock registered on Daniel's weathered face. That's not possible. The accident in Nevada was real, Victor confirmed, but Michael survived. Barely. spent 8 months in rehabilitation learning to walk again. When he got out, he made a decision not to contact you. Daniel struggled to process this. Why? Because he thought you'd be ashamed of what he'd become. A biker with a criminal record, involved in things he knew you'd disapprove of. He thought it would be easier if you believed he was dead. Easier, Daniel repeated, disbelief and anger warring. To think my son was dead. To miss his marriage, his child's birth. Victor held up a hand. I'm not defending his choice, just explaining it. Michael had his own demons, regrets about how things ended between you. Pride is powerful, sometimes too powerful. Daniel turned away, struggling to maintain composure. Where is he now? Montana. Has a motorcycle repair shop outside Bozeman. Lives quietly. He left the club officially after the accident, though we still consider him family. Does he know about David? About Elena and Lucas? Victor nodded. He knows. Asked me to keep an eye on them after David died. Make sure they were taken care of. That's why I was at that gas station. I check in periodically from a distance. Daniel absorbed this in silence, decades of discipline helping him process shock. Lucas deserves to know his father's alive, Daniel said finally, regardless of what's between Michael and me. I agree, Victor replied, and I think after all this, Michael might be ready to face the past too. As they spoke, first rays of true dawn broke over the eastern horizon. A new day was beginning, one in which 4 vulnerable lives had been saved, a criminal enterprise exposed, long-buried truths brought to light. Daniel Morrison stood at this confluence of past and future, the weight of years and choices heavy on his shoulders. But alongside that weight was something he hadn't felt in very long: hope. Hope for reconciliation with his son, hope for relationship with his grandson, hope that darkness was finally receding. I want to see him, Daniel decided, after we ensure Elena and Lucas are safe, victims properly cared for. I want to go to Montana. Victor smiled, rare, genuine expression transforming his intimidating features. I thought you might say that. I've already got a route planned, scenic ride through beautiful country. One condition, Daniel said. Lucas comes with us. It's time he met his father. As sun continued ascending, illuminating the world with increasing clarity, Daniel felt weight lifting from his spirit. The mission was complete. Justice was being served. A path toward healing, both for victims of Asclepius Consortium and for his own fractured family, was opening before him. Whatever came next wouldn't be easy. Reconciliation never was. But Daniel Morrison had never shied away from difficult missions, especially those that truly mattered. And this, perhaps, was the most important mission of all.